Psalms 23. Psalms 23 will be on the last part of our series this evening, as we will be looking at verse number 6, Psalm 23. Thankful that the Lord is faithful and true tonight. Wouldn't be here otherwise. Psalm 23 and verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Lord, as we come before you, thank you for this time that we have in your house. And as your word is open, as we come to the conclusion tonight of Psalm 23, I just ask you to once again work in our hearts as we look at the Good Shepherd. We look at your faithfulness. We look at how we can have confidence in you. And I just ask you to meet with us. And I ask you to give me the words tonight that you would have me to say, the words that you know your people need to hear. In Jesus' name, amen. Psalm 23 concludes with one of the most comforting promises in all of Scripture. And it's surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We live in a world that is filled with uncertainty. Life is uncertain in many ways. Things are fine. We know this. Things are fine until they aren't. And we all know tonight that circumstances will change. Health will change. The economy will change. Relationships will change. Everything in terms of earth and life will change. Yet in the middle of a changing world, David reminds us that God's faithfulness to his flock never changes. David ends Psalm 23 with confidence. David is not shaken. David's confidence has grown in God as the years have passed. Many theologians believe that this psalm reflects upon David's youth as a shepherd and how God has shepherded him. But it was penned when he was an adult, maybe even king at the time of his writing. But either way, whether he was young, middle-aged, or old, David had enough experience in the faithfulness of God to have confidence in him. How does one gain trust? By being faithful, by being constant. Not only in the good times, but in the difficult times. Not only when faithfulness is easy, but when it would be hard to be faithful. What do you do when you don't want to? What do you do when you don't feel like it? See, all of these things are what makes us at times unstable. But God doesn't have the human condition. Notice that David does not say goodness and mercy might follow him. He does not say goodness and mercy could follow him. David says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. David is confident in the faithfulness of God. The insurance commercial says we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. And folks, we know who God is primarily by taking him at his word, but also we have seen him work on more than one occasion. So notice tonight the confidence of the believer. David says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. The word surely speaks of certainty. Surely means certainly, undoubtedly, without question. So how does this confidence come, though? David had experienced times that weren't as plentiful, and the good shepherd led him to green pastures. David had experienced failures, and the good shepherd restored his soul. David had walked through valleys. The good shepherd was there with him there. David had faced enemies. We looked at this last week. The good shepherd prepared a table in front of those enemies for David and anointed his head and blessed him so much that his cup overflowed. Yet after all he had seen and gone through, he could still say, surely. We can say surely tonight because we've been in those times where our backs were against the wall. We'd searched for answers and we couldn't find any. We'd looked for direction, but we didn't have direction. And God met us in those times. I'm often reminded of the testimony given by Clarence Sexton's assistant ahead of his final message. Brother Sexton's assistant leaned over ahead of Brother Sexton's message and said, Pastor, why don't you just rest and let me preach? And Brother Sexton said, no, I want you to watch something. I'm going to go to the pulpit and the Lord is going to meet me there. So how did he know that the Lord was going to meet him there? Because the Lord had already met him so many other times, in so many other places. And it's in the journey that we call the Christian life that the Good Shepherd meets us where we are. David's confidence was not in himself. His confidence was not in his circumstances, but his confidence was in the character of God. We see throughout all the scriptures that any man or woman to do anything for God done so because they knew that they were nothing without God. Spurgeon said, the Lord's mercy and goodness are not occasional visitants, but constant attendants. Notice also this evening the companion of the believer. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. So notice the two companions that David mentions. Look tonight at the goodness and mercy of God as companions. When we think of man's best friend as it would pertain to this earth, we know people to mean dogs whenever they say that. Some of you may have cats, but they are companions. David said the believers essentially have two companions that are following them. Think about your dog or think about your cat. We've got one, the older that he gets, kind of the more clingy that he gets, and he's behind you everywhere. You don't even have to call him. You don't even have to ask him to come. It doesn't matter. You've got up and you've started to walk, so here he comes. He's coming with you. He's going to be right there with you. You go here, he's over there. You go there, he's over there. It don't matter. Wherever you go, he's going to go. He's following. And David is essentially saying the believers have two companions that are following them throughout their whole life. And it's goodness and mercy. So in breaking these down some, we'll start with goodness. Goodness is defined as kindness, benevolence, that quality which communicates happiness. So God's goodness is constantly at work on the behalf of his children. Sometimes we recognize his goodness immediately. Sometimes we see it only after looking back. Romans 8:28 communicates this to us, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. So even in seasons that we don't fully understand everything, God's goodness is working still in such a way for his goodness in it all to just simply be revealed at a later time. Looking at mercy, mercy is defined as that benevolence, mildness, or tenderness of heart, which disposes a person to overlook injuries or to treat an offender better than he deserves. You know, mercy is our companion even when we stumble. Mercy is our companion when we fail. Mercy, it lifts us up when we grow weary at times. Mercy reminds us that God has not given us what we deserve. It's been said mercy is an attribute of God, an infinite and inexhaustible energy within the divine nature. So every day we live under the shadow of God's mercy. Notice also the pursuit of the believer. We read, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. When you consider the word follow, we don't see any promptings to be followed. We don't see any invitations to be followed. God don't need promptings from us. God don't need invitations from us. He's good whether or not we ask him to be good or not. Which means goodness and mercy are following us as God is always with us. And since God is always with us, we get who he is, which is goodness and mercy. The word follow is a powerful word as it means to pursue, to chase, to go after. God's goodness and mercy is pursuing you, chasing after you, going after you. David paints a beautiful picture here where God's blessings are pursuing his people. We looked recently, not too long ago, at Jonah on the run from the Lord. Jonah did not outrun God's goodness. Jonah did not outrun God's mercy. God pursued Jonah. And Jonah experienced the attributes of God that Jonah needed to experience. There was some consequence. There was some mercy. There was some grace. As I said before, I'd read somewhere where it said that mercy in Jonah's case was, I believe it said was wearing work clothes. I can't remember the exact phrase, but sometimes mercy comes in hard before you experience the side of it that the Lord wants you to. Here we see where God's blessings are pursuing his people. This means we're living our lives. We're going day to day, and God's goodness and his mercy follows after us. I ask you tonight, who can hide from God's goodness and mercy? Nobody. Sometimes what we got to realize, the worst person on this earth is breathing God's air. The worst one that you can think of is breathing God's air. And God chose to wake them up that morning. God chose to allow them to get up and walk on the earth that he created. Eat of the fruit of the vine, whatever it may be. God allowed it. We're going day to day in God's goodness, and his mercy is following us. Who can hide from God's blessings? Even during seasons when we wander, God's goodness is still pursuing us. It's a good God after what we do sometimes for his goodness to come after us, for his mercy to pursue us, to bring us back. There was a time when maybe you could testify that you were running from God. Yet even then, God's hand was on your life. I couldn't see it as clearly when I was away from the Lord in the Marines because I was in rebellion. But I see his hand on my life clearly now looking back, that he had a purpose for me and he had a plan for me. And despite all that I was doing, the Lord preserved me. His goodness was pursuing me. His mercy was pursuing me. Sometimes God's goodness is displayed in restrained judgment. Or maybe it was through his goodness that judgment wasn't as bad as it could have been. And it was mercy that preserved you. And it was his grace that kept you. Many of us can look back maybe and say that things were not as bad as they could have been, because that was the goodness of God. It was the mercy of God. Sometimes God blesses us not only by what he gives us, but by what he withholds from us. How many dangers has he prevented? How many accidents has he spared us from? How many consequences has mercy withheld because he gave us another opportunity to get it right? We'll never fully know this side of heaven. Spurgeon said the worst things work for good to the saints. Afflictions are but God's goldsmiths working to add pearls to his saints' crowns. We're reminded tonight that goodness and mercy are continually pursuing God's children. We also see the constancy. All the days of my life. Notice David doesn't say some or most days. He doesn't say the easy days. He doesn't say the successful days, the healthy days, the wealthy days. He says all the days of my life. That's all of them. It's the good days. It's the difficult days. It's the mountaintop days. It's the valley days. It's all the days of rejoicing, the days of weeping, the days of plenty, the days of famine. God's goodness remains present through them all. And sometimes it is helpful to be reminded of these things, especially in our days of difficulties, our days of trials. I don't believe anybody in their situations and in their trials, their difficulties, would ever get mad at God for what they were going through if they just maintained the fact that God was good in spite of it all. When I began to run from the Lord, I was not focused on his goodness. I was focused on the things that I did not believe were good that had happened to me in my life. God's goodness remains present throughout everything. Your darkest of days. And sometimes it does. It takes growth and it takes walking with the Lord to be able to look back on things and see how the Lord used things to shape you, how the Lord used things to mold you. And you can see how God was good throughout it all. I do remember when the Lord began to help me with these things. Even like, for example, my dad's suicide. I was angry at God about my dad's suicide. Then the Lord began to highlight his goodness to me in it. He said, you know what? Some people never knew their dad. You knew yours for 14 years. You had yours for 14 years. He taught you some things. Some people, their dad never taught them anything. He taught you some things. You had time around him. Again, some people, they never knew their dad. There's all kinds of things that the Lord began to highlight to me. To say that, you know what, even though it was a difficult situation, God was good in it all. He's still good. Everything I've gone through, I can look back at it. And the Lord's highlighted throughout it all. How he's been good throughout it all. Psalm 23 reminds us that every day of our lives is covered by the shepherd's watchful care. Matthew Henry said, God's goodness and mercy have followed us all the days of our lives, and all our days they shall continue to follow us. We have a promise here from the Good Shepherd. Notice, lastly, this evening, the completion of the believer's journey. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. At this point in Psalm 23, David is lifting his eyes from beyond this world and everything that the world contains and everything that the world has going on. Everywhere he's been on this earth, what's happened to him on this earth, where he's at that current moment. And he's looking out into eternity. I'm thankful that Psalm 23 doesn't end in a valley. It doesn't end with death. It doesn't end at the cemetery, because the believer has a future home. The word dwell means to abide as a permanent resident, to reside. If I were to ask tonight how many of you hate moving, your hands would probably be up. And so much so that some would probably say, I'm never moving again. I'm thankful that in heaven it's a permanent resident. There is no address changes anymore in heaven. David wasn't speaking about a vacation or some kind of temporary visit. He was speaking of the permanent home that awaits the child of God, because heaven is home. I was thinking about when we travel, how good it is to come back home. You don't like the hotel. You don't even know who all's staying in there. I don't get comfortable in hotels. You never know who's next door. You don't know what kind of spirit they got. And I pay attention to that stuff. Some stuff. Some people might think I overthink some of that stuff, but I'm just saying there's a reason sometimes why I can't get comfortable somewhere in my spirit. I ain't just talking about my flesh. I'm talking about in my spirit I can't get comfortable. And if I can't get comfortable in my spirit, I'm struggling to relax, and I'm struggling to sleep. I need the peace of the Lord, so sometimes I wonder what's going on sometimes around me. But it is good to get home. It's good to be home when you've been traveling. It's good to be in your own bed. Sit in your own chair, your own love seat, or your own couch, whatever it is. Look at the scenery that is familiar to you. And it just feels like home, but that pales in comparison. Because you know what? We're going to have complete rest. Sometimes we say that we have rested, but none of us have experienced complete rest on this earth. None of us have experienced it. In heaven, we will have complete rest. You might close your eyes and go to sleep. You might take a little cat nap during the day, whatever it is. None of us have ever experienced complete rest on this earth. Got thieves and robbers and all kinds of stuff. There ain't no complete rest on this earth. You got people that'll rob you for the next high. There is no complete rest on this earth. But we'll have complete rest in heaven. We will have complete peace in heaven. It won't be fleeting peace because of us at times. And we tend to go on the roller coaster of the ups and downs. It won't be fleeting peace. See, we don't have fleeting peace because of God here on this earth. We got fleeting peace because of us. But in heaven, when our sin nature is gone, we have our new glorified bodies. Complete peace. Complete rest. One day our faith will become sight. I read this. It said one day prayer will become praise. I don't know what we'll be praying for in heaven. We got it all. Think about it tonight. Where's your prayer list? Where's it going to go? Who you going to pray for? You going to pray for you? No. You pray for somebody else? No. You going to pray for the church? No. We up there. Prayer list gone. It's all praise. Could you imagine coming to a service where it is all praise? Nobody's lifting up prayer requests. Nobody's hurting. Nobody's sick. Nobody needs anything. Everybody's complete. Everybody's whole. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually whole. 100%. Praise. One day sorrow will give way to joy. One day we will stand in the presence of the Good Shepherd forever. Revelation 21 and verse 4, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. Emphasis on this last phrase, for the former things are passed away. It's the things of this earth, the natural things, the former things are passed away. One day, earth as we know it will be gone away. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth. It is beyond what our minds can fully comprehend. D.L. Moody said, earth recedes, heaven opens before me. I've often wondered what dying saints see. I've heard different testimonies. There's different books that have been written about it. Not going to be dogmatic one way or another, but I'm just saying there are some, I'm not going to discount some of the stuff that I've heard about dying saints and what they see as they're departing this earth and going to heaven. But Moody said, earth recedes and heaven opens before me. And this is the hope of every believer, an eternity with the Lord. Psalm 23 begins with, the Lord is my shepherd. And then it ends with that last phrase, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. From salvation to eternity, God takes care of his sheep. And that's what we learn from Psalm 23. And it is that the Lord is the good shepherd. We put all of our emphasis sometimes on verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And while it be true, we've got to look at it in the context of verses 1 through 6. From salvation to eternity, the Good Shepherd is out front. And the Good Shepherd leads us. The Good Shepherd feeds us and provides for us and nurtures us. We see where his goodness follows us and where his mercy follows us. So like David, we can say with confidence, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will, there's another absolute right there, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We looked at a little series once on the I wills of David. But maybe one day I'll go through all the Psalms on the I wills of David. David had a lot of confidence in his life. A lot of confidence in God. Yeah, he had his ups and downs. But overall, David had a lot of confidence in God. He knew that God was faithful. He knew that God was in control. He knew that God either divinely orchestrates things or God divinely allows things. He knew it. There was times he wanted his enemies killed. There was times he wanted them saved. We know what that's like. We go back and forth sometimes. Sometimes we sound like we got a whole lot of grace, and then sometimes we sound like we got a whole lot of war. We're up and down. We want to see people get right. Sometimes we want to see people destroyed. Sometimes. That was David. Sometimes he had complete peace. Other times he didn't. Sometimes he had joy, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he was living right. There was other times, obviously, that he wasn't. There's a lot that we can learn from David. And God has these men in here as examples and these women as examples. And it's amazing. The more you study David, it's amazing. You can't lose sight of God. From Genesis to Revelation, it's about God. There are names, there are events, there are places. But ultimately it points back to God. Every bit of it. And we learn through Psalm 23 about the Good Shepherd. And again, begins in verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, and it ends with, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So from salvation to our homegoing, the Good Shepherd is there with us. Lord, as we come before you,